So we recently took a look at this percussion pistol, which is a bit of a restoration project for me. And maybe more than a restoration project, it's kind of a training ground for me to get a better idea of these kinds of weapons and how they work and how they should be handled and restored and worked on. And we first diagnosed what seemed to be wrong with it, what we should be doing maybe, and then took it apart. And as you can see, it's now put together, although loosely. I didn't tighten anything because this was just a first put together just to see that everything fit together, that no mistakes were made. And I wanted to make sure that, and I wanted to check if I had been able to fix the mechanics on the pistol. So if you watched the first video, while the hammer cocked at half cock and full cock, the trigger didn't action it, or better, the trigger unlocked it, but the spring didn't make it fall. So when taking it apart, I took a look at the mechanism and tried to kind of figure out if it could be fixed. And well, the good news is that at least at half cock, it holds. The problem, however, is that at full cock, so half, we go to full, and here it doesn't hold. It slips back, skipping the half cock position too, and yeah, it doesn't stay locked. So something's up with the mechanism. I might have done, what I did was kind of trial and error, so I might have set something incorrectly in the mechanism. But also I noticed that there was a lot of rust in the small parts of the mechanism itself. So what I initially did was just brush the mechanism without taking apart each component, but I don't think that's good enough. I see there's still rust. So what we're going to do today is focus on the lock and see, well, first clean it up and then figure out if we can fix it and make it work in both positions. Okay, so let's take a closer look at this lock. Let me check if I'm in focus. Yes. So as we've seen in the previous video, this spring, this loop in the spring needs to seat this tooth under here like this, because then this spring's tendency to push down is going to action the whole mechanism and bring the hammer down whenever the trigger is released. And the trigger release is this bar you have here. So by pulling the trigger, you lift this bar slightly like this, and this actions this catch. Let me show you with the, maybe it makes more sense like this. Yeah, so here is the cocked position, and when you release this catch here, the hammer is free to move down and fall onto the cap. And when you cock the hammer, you have a half cocked position here, and then a full cocked position here. Now, what's happening here is that the half cock position holds, but this spring is so strong that when it's in full cock position, it just drags the whole hammer down without any resistance. And you can actually see it here too. I'm probably doing something that isn't a great idea, but just to show you, this is in the full cock position. If I just push a little on the hammer, well, it's not working now, but if I push just a little on the hammer, yeah, it slips. On the half cock position, it doesn't slip at all with any amount of strength. So what I'm afraid of here is that, let's go back to full cock, is that this second point, the catch for the full cock, may have been used up too much. There may be, yeah, it may be consumed, so it doesn't hold the catch anymore. Even though I have to say that looking at it, it doesn't look to be, like, it looks in pretty good shape, so I don't understand what's going on. Anyway, this is just to introduce the whole what's going on. I'm going to now take it apart, and then we're going to see all the components one by one and figure out if we can fix it. If this is indeed consumed, if any one of you knows how to reshape it or what I could do to make it lock again, that would be great. But hopefully we can figure out something in the same way as we fixed it last time by just taking it apart and reassembling it. Maybe there's something that I missed here, and yeah, we might be able to get it to work. In any case, we'll take the whole thing apart and clean it for this video. So I'm trying a new setup here. Usually I'm standing, because when I do sword videos, I'm standing. I'm sitting here, so I don't have as good control on the screen as I normally have. I hope everything's in focus. I can kind of see it with the side of my eye. But yeah, this is a bit of a test. But it's easier for me then to work on these small things without getting a backache. So the first thing we'll do is release, since we're going to clean everything anyway, we'll first release the spring here. And I have to say, this spring is hardcore. Like, it's really pretty incredible how a simple piece of steel like this can action a whole mechanism like the one we've seen for this pistol. So I can't really bend this even with all the force of my fingers, which may not be much, but yeah. So we'll set this aside for the moment, together with the hammer, so it doesn't throw our focus off. And I wonder, we might also find some maker's marks. I haven't found anything so far. The only thing that gets even close to a mark is maybe this, but I don't know. So anyway, now this is a really tricky thing. In the other video, when I took this apart, it was off camera. It was then quite hard to get the locking, to get this whole mechanism back in place, because the alignment is so precise that if anything is even slightly off, one of the screws is doesn't really lock back in place. So it was a little bit of a fiddly job, but in the end we got it done. There we go. So basically there is some tension even on this screw, is what I'm saying. Like now when I released it, I felt a click and something moved. I don't know if that's by design or if that's maybe what the problem is. We'll try and figure that out. But our main concern here now is at least to clean the rust off, because honestly, this pistol is not going to be shooting anytime anymore. So even the fact that it doesn't stay at full cock doesn't really matter that much. And it could also be, I wonder, no, and this is instead of the spring of the trigger release. So the lever here is kept down by the spring, right? It's very incredible how such a simple setup can... Okay, does this work? Yeah. Okay, there we go. So I'll put all the screws apart for a moment, and then we'll take a look at the mechanisms and figure things out. For the time being, I want to check whether there's any marking anywhere here. Does this come off too? No, this is fixed in place. I do not see any markings or anything of the sort. So I'll clean this up and be right back. Okay, so I've decided to use Autosol here because with the fact that I don't want to be opening this mechanism down the line to take care of rust, I want to remove any trace of rust so that once we oil it up, it's preserved for the ages. So I'm using one of the green pads and just kind of rubbing the whole surface on the inside. I'm not going to do the outside because, well, that can be oiled and cleaned. Maintenance on that isn't as difficult. But I just want to get all of the traces of rust off. That's it. Oh, and this is a screw. It's a screw that's basically flat into the what looked like just a, it looked like a like a slit in the metal, but it's actually a screw. I can see I hope you see it on the video too, the round profile. So let's try and action that and see if it comes loose by any chance. Okay, so after the screwdriver slipping here, and it didn't really damage the edge here, but well, it left a little bit of a mark. I decided not to try and remove this. This will just leave wherever it is. This, I think, is one of those good lessons for beginners, and that you should kind of abide by, and is don't overdo it. If you don't need to, don't touch it. So that's what I'm going to do now. So anyway, this is now clean. We'll oil it up. We'll oil the whole thing up later. Okay, moving on to the small spring. And this one is also too strong for my fingers. We are a weak species, I think. Or I am, at least. So I'll just get that clean on the external face of it. Just remove any of that dirty grime and stuff. Let me check the screw. What conditions that's in. No, there's no rust here on the screw. We're good. We're pretty good here. And there's no real rust, just a bit of dirt under here. Maybe we can get in there. I'll use my trusty toothbrush, of course. Just clean out any of that grime. And yeah, we're nice and clean now. All right, let's wipe it off, and then it'll be ready to reassemble or to try and figure out what the problem is. Now, moving on to the other components here. Here is the, okay. This is the full cock. So this is the full cock notch, and here's the half cock notch. And if you actually compare the two, sorry, I'm out of frame. If you actually compare the two here, you'll see that one of them has a rather sharp edge here, whereas the full cock one doesn't. So maybe it's an issue of dirt settling in there, or maybe it's the oil that's making it slip. So we'll clean it up, and hopefully it holds. But I have to say, I have the feeling that this may be just a bit of a consumed component, and so maybe it just slips there. And now we'll move on to the but I don't see a lot of rust here, so there's none here on the, and maybe, you know, this is also could be the problem. Maybe this is too rounded. Maybe this would need, aha, this seems to be consumed. This little edge seems to, oh, sorry, out of focus. This little edge seems to have worn off. So it could be that by simply pulling this out, if that makes sense, or by reshaping it a little, maybe just a little bit of a file. I don't know, I have no idea, but in any case, we'll clean up the rusty parts of it, and then we can clean the spring. So the spring has a little bit of rust. I think we'll just quickly wipe it down with our sponge. So let's try and get the mechanism back together. We'll run through a dry reassembly without the oil, just because it gets messy, and just to see if things work and how they work. So let me just show you here. We have a pin that fits into this hole on the plate, and this little tooth up here that rests on this block. And that aligns the screw hole here perfectly with the screw head, so we can actually tighten that in place. And you'll see that the spring naturally wants to go really down low. So it's really a rather powerful screw, I would say. Sorry, a rather powerful spring, which is probably why the hammer at full cock also slips, because there's so much force exerted onto it. Now for the rest of the mechanism, I'll see, I have to figure out if I'm assembling it correctly, so this is something I need to check. But here we have basically our block with the two catches for full. You know what, the more I look at it, the more I think it's consumed even here. You can see it's like slanted almost. It's slightly slanted there. So I think there might be some damage that cannot really be fixed, I'm afraid. But anyway, this fits in, and this is that square nut the hammer actually locks onto. We then have the screw, the spring for the trigger spring, and this goes up in this hole, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, actually, look, these guys were pretty smart. To make sure you don't mess things up, they have a little lip here on the spring. You can see it there, this little lip, and this fits exactly into this recess here. Sorry, there, it fits into this recess here, so you know exactly how to align it correctly. So now we align it there. So these guys were actually thinking about people 200 years later, taking things apart without knowing what they were doing, and they made it a little easier for us. Okay, tighten the screw. Our spring is correctly in place. Now this has to, wait, how's this? This has to be on the outside like this, right? Yes. Okay, let's figure things out. Let's start by what we know. So this has to go in here. And this, does it go here? No, this is the, okay, so this goes here like this. And there must be some sort of a screw. Ah, yes, there we go. So this hole, sorry, I was completely out of focus. So this hole in the trigger release must align with that hole you see there in the plate. And then this screw will go through them both and keep everything connected. At the same time, this center hole here aligns with this pin, and then this screw up here will go into that hole and keep everything connected to the plate. So let's see if we can, it's easier said than done, perhaps. I have a feeling that that catch here for this spring was meant to actually force it into place as the last thing. So we'll first assemble everything without the spring in the way, because I think that will make things a lot easier. I should probably have taken a picture. I feel rather dumb now. So we know that this goes here. So now it's just a matter of determining how these align. This center hole obviously has to fit on here. So whether it's done so as this way, no, not this way for sure. Or whether it's done like this, here we go, yes. Okay, this is the correct alignment. So now we can take our screw here and push it in place. Okay, that fell out, but now that we know how things work, I think we're going to be fine. I'll push that in there. Align it, get that second screw in, set everything in place, and now we're going to place the spring. We're going to first screw this in place, and then we're going to push down on the spring so that it sets in its correct position. And I think this is how things should be done. Okay. Yes, yes, it snapped in place just perfectly. And now we can see again, this works. This is again out of place, so we're going to have to, again, push this up, lock it onto the tooth, but I can't do that on camera. And let's try and figure out what's up with the cocking mechanism. So if we release the trigger, this goes down and hits the thing, and then we cock it once and twice. The click is really good. It's just, and I honestly cannot understand there's nothing missing. These two pieces align perfectly. So what is wrong? Okay, I'll be right back. I'll try putting the spring back in place, and then we'll figure out if it works. Way longer than I wanted to, than I was hoping it to, especially for a dry run. I think I'll oil it up just like this. I don't think I'll take it apart again. Because, I mean, every time you take something apart, you increase the risk of causing damage. But you can see the spring is now back in place. And just to give you some information on how I did it, I tried a few methods. But in the end, I clamped up here. I put a clamp that kind of caught on the spring and on the top here and clamped it in until the spring went in position, and then I was able to act on the cocking mechanism and pull it. It's possibly dangerous because this wasn't fixed on a vise or anything, so I was holding the clamp in one hand, so there was always the potential for everything to slip out, and it's under a lot of tension. So don't do it at home unless you're sure about what you're doing. But yeah, this is how I did it. So the home brew method, I would say. Now the next test that we could run, I suppose, is pull this to full cock and see if it holds. But I'm not going to do it now, because if by any chance it doesn't hold, as I assume it won't, this whole thing is going to go off in my hand, and I might have my finger caught under the hammer, and yeah, it might just be a bunch of painful lessons. Anyway, this was the point of this video was to clean this up and check the mechanism. So I'm not going to reassemble the whole gun. If you have any tips, if looking at this, you have any tips on how to reshape or what to do to make the full cock part of the mechanism grip again, please let me know, because I would love to get this back in full working order. But if it's not possible, or if it's something that's too risky, then I'll just skip it.